Was my mic muted? Was my microphone muted? Was my microphone muted? Was I just talking for 60 seconds and my microphone was muted? Good morning to most. Yes, it was. Thanks, Unknown Avenger. I'm gonna figure out the streaming thing one day. Good morning to most. Happy afternoon to some. Where are you guys watching from, and what is your town known for? Okay, good to know that it's okay. Now I'm coming through all clear. What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? Glad to have you guys in here. We've been having fun. We've been talking about why America is fat, right? We often talk about we often talking about losing weight. That's a huge conversation across so many platforms and so many mediums. Like how do I get the weight off, and what are the best strategies, and what's the best diet, what's the best exercise? And a lot of those options are really viable. But I think in order to really understand health and really weight loss, if you are looking to get into weight loss, how did it get there in the first place, right? You can't cut the weed at the top. You have to get it at the root, right? So I want us to talk about some of the mechanisms and some of the science and some of the things that I say America because I'm from America, but this is also a worldwide thing that could, this could impact separate countries. But I talk about America because I am an American. But honestly, the conversation is relevant all across the board. What's up, guys? Get on here, light the chat up. What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? We're gonna reveal what we're gonna be talking about today, and I'm so excited for this one. This is one of the dopest things, one of the dopest concepts to talk about. Hotel developer says because of processed garbage. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's definitely a huge piece of it, and lack of initiative on behalf processed foods. Isaiah, what's up, my guy? Lack of initiative on behalf of, why is that blocked for me? Okay. All right. Let me not get sidetracked and distracted because that'll happen quick. I'm so excited for this stream. We're going to get right onto the value, guys. Let's talk about it. I already see some guesses in chat. We're going to be talking about it. But first, I have to prove that, yes, we are getting fatter, right? We seen this. We talked about this in the first couple of streams. We talked about this concept of obesity. We talked about the BMI chart and its areas of effectiveness and then its areas of ineffectiveness, if you will. But we are getting fatter. Yes, obesity rates are growing, right? There are very few people that can muscularize themselves into the category of obesity. We talked about the extreme example of The Rock being one of them, but in general, we are becoming a bigger nation. So those are the numbers right here, right on in front of us. I went a little deeper into them in previous streams. Now, I kind of tricked you guys. I titled this one different than what's making Americans really, really fat. I talked about that for 2 episodes in the last. This is technically part 3. So we're going to talk about the third thing that is making Americans really, really fat. I just titled it differently to add a little bit of freshness and get some people in here so we can have a little bit more fun. But I'm actually going to change the title probably when I put it up. But let's talk about it. What is the third thing? Sleep deprivation. Roman says high fructose corn syrup. That's not a bad one. Sleep deprivation. What's up, Sparky? Good to see you. Sleep deprivation. Oh man, I love this conversation. I love the topic of sleep. It is one of the most underrated influencers, one of the most underrated, underappreciated things in the health sphere all together. And I love this conversation because sleep, if you get right, will it'll probably surprise you in terms of the amount of things that it impacts, right? That's why I'm always constantly trying to optimize my sleep. I haven't been as great at it as I want it to be, as great at it as I want it to be in recent times, but I've gotten better. I've gotten a lot better. Naomi, what's up? Thanks for being here. Shout out to the mods. Greet each other in chat, guys. Let me know where you guys are watching from. And what is your town known for? If you haven't told me yet, where are you watching from? What is your town known for? So yes, we're going to be talking about sleep deprivation, but this is going to be a fun stream because we're actually going to be getting into not just sleep deprivation, right? We're going to talk about some of the mechanisms behind how this correlates to actual fat loss or gaining fat, I should say. This is going to be mainly about how the fat gets on the body. We're going to talk a little bit about the research. We're going to talk a little bit about the actual things that are taking place on a microscopic level, but it'll all make a whole lot of sense. And we're going to talk about circadian rhythm, all this other stuff. So I'm super excited and pumped for this one. because it's going to be one of those things where you get a refresher on the knowledge and you're going to be like, ooh, I should be implementing that. And you're going to want to change your alarm and make sure you get to bed like tonight, even though it's Saturday. It's going to be quite the ride. All right, let's get on into it. I have to organize my camera for every shot now because OBS does this weird thing where your camera's not plugged up. You can't like organize it. So give me a sec, but let's go to this next one and just look at this real quick. So, let's talk about it. So, in order to really understand, like how America gets fat, like how we get fat in general, the average person, or however you will have it, in order to understand how we get fat, we have to understand essentially the conversation of hormones, right? We have to understand the conversation of hormones on a near intuitive level. Now, I was taught in school, in college, I was taught a hormone is a chemical messenger. And it's a very intentional wording here. Messenger truly is the best word we can use for what hormones do. Because the chemical messenger, and messenger really is the key word, because we're talking about the endocrine system. So the endocrine system has a goal, right? It's in charge of something. But the actual boots to ground workers that actually do the job of the endocrine system are our hormones. So what do? They are in charge of doing all of the communicating in order to regulate our metabolism. They're in charge of doing all of the communicating in order to regulate our metabolism. And we know metabolism, we talk about it all the time. It's fast, slow, and you've heard the vernacular before. So what does that actually mean on a practical level? Well, we're going to actually get into what that means in this one here, but we're going to talk about some things that fall under that umbrella that are relevant to our metabolism, right? And I'm excited to get on into those things. So what do we mean by chemical messengers? Well, again, these are the actual boots to ground workers that do the job of the endocrine system. But what is the actual goal of the endocrine system? The endocrine system is a bunch of glands that secrete, right, send out these hormones to communicate to the body to do things, right? There are receptive tissues that are adherent to these hormones, and they change our metabolism in real time. And that is really the beauty of the endocrine system. The body is just this communicative being. There are so many things that are in conversation with each other at once, right? You think about the nervous system, and how that's, there's the brain, there's the spinal cord. You think about all the branches of nerves that stem out from that, and then you have your hormones, your endocrine system, and there's just so many things, right, that connect the body. But really, this endocrine system is one of the most topical when we're talking about how fat is gained, how fat is lost, right? This is a conversation that you want to have. I've always said this, that if people are talking about how to gain weight or how to lose weight, right? And that's the conversation, and if you're trying to get advice, and you're listening to somebody and they aren't bringing up your hormones, you got to tune that person out, because this is literally the boots to ground workers that are making the impact. Huntsville, Alabama, known for making rockets. I just learned something new. Cute Kitty says she's from South Carolina, and they're known for famously hot. Ooh. The hotel developer says he's from Austin, Texas, and they're known for being weird. I would have probably guessed Florida for that. Sorry if I'm offending anybody from Florida. If you guys are just joining in, let me know where you're from, and what is your town slash city slash area of Providence known for. Naomi, okay, this is a long message for you. Melatonin is known as a hormone attributed to youthfulness, if I'm not mistaken, critical in terms of cell regeneration and production of serotonin. Yes, input from Ahmad. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's absolutely on par. And funny enough, melatonin has quite the degree of impact in the conversation we're going to have as well. And I'm not going to talk too deep about melatonin in this conversation here, but I think I'm going to bring it up at some point. So I think that's an interesting take for sure. Now, okay, let's keep this thing going. So we talked about the ultimate goal of the endocrine system, right? It is to be in homeostasis. It's to regulate the metabolism to a point of what we call homeostasis. Now, homeostasis, I've talked about this a little bit before, but homeostasis, we really want to know this word like automatically, because out of everything the body does, this is one of its primary goals, right? I'd say its first goal is to survive. Its second goal is to be in a homeostatic state, to be in a state of homeostasis. So what does that mean? In a simplified definition, homeostasis means to be in physiological balance. Physiological balance. But that's a tricky word, right? That's a tricky B word, if you will, right? Because balance, we want to think that it's just this kind of like perfect state of being not too far left, not too far right. You're just balanced, right? But really, balance, if we understand it, is a continuous state of readjustments, small readjustments, sometimes large, right? Balance is a state of readjusting, continual readjusting. This is Hesley Rivera. She is the youngest person we're sending over to Paris this year for the Olympic Summer Games. She's just turned 16 in June. And out of everybody we're sending over to Paris, she is the youngest. She made the team for creative gymnastics. And you guys may have seen her or her father even around on the internet, because her father is like super proud. Like when he got the news that she was going, like he was like in stance, like he has a bald head. He was like rubbing his head and like just overwhelmed with excitement. It's really funny. But this is Hesley Rivera. And I wanted to find a picture for her on a balance beam because this makes it really practical, right? Balance is never like I'm standing, I'm still, and I'm stiff. Like, no, in order to be on this beam, you have to make these continual readjustments. And Olympians probably are really good at this, right? So they make it look easy. And if we can make the comparison, maybe we want our body to also make physiological balance look easy. But we're going to talk about some things that make it hard for our body to stay in this physiological state of homeostasis. And of course, I could not talk about the team going over without talking about Simone Biles. Of course, we have to bring up Simone Biles. And you can actually see, this is on a more practical scale, you can actually see, she's covering my face. You can actually see that her arms are out, right? Her arms are out. She's like recalibrating. And that's what balance is, right? It's never this state, a steady state, especially in the dynamic world that we live in. Balance isn't some type of steady state. It is something that is constantly changing and constantly we are readjusting. Absolutely, absolutely. Obviously, where are you from? I don't know. I wanna woke up honestly. Hello, Germany. First. Johanna says she just got 4 hours of sleep. Can confirm sleep deprivation really degrades your willpower, increases the munchies. That is such an interesting take. Yes, and there is a survival mechanism behind our terrible food decisions when we are sleep deprived. And we're going to talk about that. You know, I may save that a little bit for when we actually start talking about the brain, a sleep deprived brain. Maybe I'll save that for when we get there. Um, but it is such a fascinating, our body always fascinates me. That's why I love gearing up for these streams, because I just love talking about this stuff on a very practical level. Your audio stream's current bitrate is 0, is lower than the recommended bitrate. We recommend you audio stream bitrate of 120. Am I coming in well? I get this notification from YouTube. Am I coming in well? You guys can hear me, right? You guys hear me, right? I should sound just fine. They're saying that my bit rate is something. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. So that's why the B word is tricky. Thanks, Pamela. That's why the B word is tricky. That word balance, because it's never really just the steady state, right? That's how we want to think of it. But nothing is ever in our dynamic world outside of being in a vacuum or some theoretical, example that everything in our dynamic world is going to need these continual readjustments in order to truly achieve what we call balance. Now, the relevance of that is really just the understanding. Let me take Simone Biles. She's distracting me with her prowess and skill. So the actual relevance of this is that there is nothing in the body that is like completely turned off on a very practical level, right? There are always levels and degrees of things, right? It's never something where it's like a switch, like this thing is totally turned off and it's not doing anything, right? There is always a level of something. And I'll give you an example. Inflammation, right? we can't really turn inflammation off, right? Inflammation is never just like not working, right? Because inflammation is just a word that we use for the action of the immune system, and that thing is kicking all the time at different degrees throughout the day, yes, but we can't really turn it off. So what we want to talk about is this dial effect. The word dial is more accurate to describe the processes of the body because you never really have something that's just like either on or off. Thank you guys for all the audio confirmations that I'm coming through clear. Thank you very much. So really that's what we want to talk about here. And this is why I talk about nuance all the time. You guys know that's my favorite word, and I keep talking about nuance because we get so binary sometimes with things when we talk about the body, especially when we talk about the application of certain strategies to achieve certain health goals. But that's a false way of going about things because we have to understand that the gray area, more than a lot of things, is so important when we're talking about how to optimize the human body for health. The gray area is way more important than we realize. All right, I'm small over here to the right side. Just keep up with me. What are we talking about? The dial. What? English? Amplification. Is it amplification? Am I having a brain fart? Google. Amplification. Yeah, what the heck? I must have been sleepy when I made this. Amplification. Guys, I tried to make a word up. My newly renewed sleep-filled brain was like, that's not a word, bro. Amplification? I'm missing some letters. Let me fix that. How embarrassing. Amplification. Where's your F in that, dog? Let's fix that. You guys, if you guys are new in, where you guys are watching from, and what is your town or your city or even your state, what is it known for? Amplification. Gosh darn it. Gosh darn it. Let me fix this too while I'm at it. What was I thinking? Like implication? Interesting. All right. Okay, two. All right, cool. Let's keep this thing rolling. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So really this is the dial that I'm talking about. This is the dial effect, right? One of the most practical alive and well things that I just love the concept of that's very easy to understand is our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system. It has two branches, one parasympathetic, and actually let's just talk about that really quick. Now, and this is all going to make a whole lot of sense. You really have to stick with this entire process in order for, right, stick with the entire stream in order for this to make the most sense once we get to the big reveal and things start to really click at the end. But you got to lay down a lot of the groundwork. So I was sifting through a bunch of research and a bunch of stuff in order for this to really make sense. But that's what No Lab Code Required is all about, right? We want to make this stuff practical and applicable in real life and not just circulating in a world of academia where a bunch of researchers are writing for their peers and not really necessarily interested in disseminating that information out to the public. But somebody's got to do that, right? Because this stuff is relevant. So what are we talking about here? What is this? So parasympathetic is the rest and digest system. Very, very straightforward. Now the autonomic system is a collection of different pieces in the body that have an influence, right? So what are the influences? What does the parasympathetic system impact? So let's just talk about it. It's known as the rest and digest system for a reason. What are some of the things that it does? Well, it increases gut motility. Motility, right? This is just a fancy way of saying that it brings the focus to the GI tract to process food, right? And shuffle things down the GI tract, focus on absorption, get things through the stomach. That is what gut motility is. And we can actually modulate that. We can speed that process up, or we can even slow it down, right? Bladder contraction, that is to say that the actual, our bladder is the pee that we're holding. In order to release it, we have to contract the bladder. And when our parasympathetic nervous system is amplified, we actually contract our bladder in order to release it. And funny enough, we have an internal sphincter and then we have an external sphincter in our the anatomy. That's the anatomy of our bladder. I remember learning that specifically in college. And I remember I told a friend, like, you know that you actually have two things that are holding back your pee. You have your internal and your external sphincter. You can't control your internal sphincter, but you can control your external sphincter. I told my friend that one day, and he was like, dude, and sometime later he was like, dude, I gotta pee so bad. My external sphincter is the only thing holding this back. I just started cracking up laughing, like, that is hilarious. But that is the true like application of anatomy in this sense, right? So we can of course control like if we have to pee or not, but really that's like the last measure. Like that's the last thing holding it back. A lot of that stuff is automatic. Now, the immune system activation, right? This is a part of the amplification of parasympathetic nervous system operation. So what are we saying here? When we are in a more chilled state, right? In the parasympathetic, we're laid back, our heart rate is slowed. A lot of us are probably in a parasympathetic nervous system right now, are primarily operating through the parasympathetic nervous system's influence right now. It's Saturday, you're chilling. Like when you think parasympathetic, you should think like groovy. Like, I'm just relaxing right now. Everything's chill. In this state, since we're not really worried or in danger or stressed out, our immune system is actually heightened and it's actually able to express and perform more duties, right? And do more things, right? The immune system is a intricate, complicated system, but it's able to amplify its activity when we're in this parasympathetic nervous system influence, right? And this is really the dial we talked about. Actually, I'm going to wait until we bring up the other system for that. So glycogen synthesis, what is that? Glycogen is leftover sugar, right? Excess sugar, and we store it in certain spaces. And now we're starting to get into why we put extra fat on the body. This is where we go into the parts that are really relevant. When we start talking about things like glycogen. Now, we know what glucose is, right? Glucose is the terminal sugar, the terminal carbohydrate of the body. Sugar is synonymous with glucose, right? We talk about, oh, my blood glucose is high. We're saying my blood sugar is high, right? Glucose is the fuel of the body. The body runs on glucose. America runs on Dunkin', the body runs on glucose. You get it. So glucose is that terminal in, like whatever we take in, whatever carbohydrate we take in, regardless of its complexity, at the end of the day, the body wants to break it down and turn it into glucose. Now, what happens when we have excessive amounts of glucose in the blood? Or what if we just have some that we don't need to use on the spot? Our body takes it and it transforms it into what we call glycogen, and it puts it up into a cabinet, right? It's a storage. This glycogen is stored in our muscles and our liver primarily, right? And that can be used on the spot for certain tasks if needed. Now, this is really why dial is important, why we're not talking about a switch, because you can't really turn off your parasympathetic nervous system, right? We talk about this on or off kind of idea, but you can't really, both of these systems are working because they express different influences on the body. So let's just look at sympathetic really quickly. We know this as our fight or flight nervous system, our autonomic nervous system, fight or flight. So obviously it's like if we're in danger, it's like what you gonna square up, you gonna box, you gonna fight, or are you going to run, right? This is a heightened state of alertness. This is a heightened state of activity in our limbs. And what are some of the things that take place? Well, I love this first one, pupil dilation. It's so practical, right? Our pupils dilate, the little black parts of our eye, they dilate. And this allows the body to take in more information in the event that we need it, right? So our alertness is high and we're able to take in more information at a moment's notice because, I got to turn my head. I got to focus on different things. They could be far, they could be near. It's like we're in this heightened state of alertness. And it may be because we are in danger or maybe we're just stressed out. Now, the sympathetic nervous system for a lot of us, it's probably triggered on a low level, on a continuous low level more than we realize when we are in traffic. I don't know where you guys are from, but I'm from Chicago. I know big city traffic, LA traffic, New York traffic. These things suck. Traffic is terrible. Now, there's there's traffic in rural areas as well. I bet it's probably even more frustrating in rural areas because you shouldn't expect it. So when it happens, it's probably like, ugh, you know? But I say all that to say, I bring up traffic because we're probably breathing short, shallow breaths, which is a indicator that we're operating from a primarily sympathetic influence, and our heart rate is probably higher than we realize. And this is how you test it. See, I just took a deep breath just thinking about it. This is how we test it. When you're in traffic, I dare you just, if you can remember, take a really deep breath. You are going to feel a sense of calm and a legitimate sense of nervous system activity start to reset your entire system. I do this all the time when I'm in traffic and I feel myself kind of getting riled up. See, a lot of us don't realize the impact of the sympathetic nervous system. But since I'm conscious of like, oh, wait, no, my sympathetic nervous system is active, I can actually counter that by slowing down my breathing. And that's a conscious choice to dip into my parasympathetic nervous system because slowing down the breath dilating our blood vessels. Those are influences of the parasympathetic nervous system, right? So the sympathetic nervous system, your heart rate increases, constriction of large arteries and veins, right? Why would we constrict our arteries and veins? Well, it's to get the blood moving. We got to shuttle this stuff because in the case of stress or danger, we want blood moving. We gotta make action quick. Like um, if you could imagine, like, I don't know what kind of dangers you guys had. I mean, obviously, we're not running from like woolly mammoths or anything, but um, I mean, where I came up, you had to worry about loose dogs, right? Nothing was like terrorizing the block more than some loose pit bulls. I remember times just being out, you walking down the street and you hear it. You hear those claws. You hear those claws on concrete. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. It's like, oh, immediately in that moment, my body goes from a chill conversation. I'm walking home from school with my friends. I'm in my parasympathetic. On the flip of a dime, I'm in my sympathetic nervous system because I just heard the nails of a dog, right? So what's going to happen? My blood vessels are going to constrict. My heart rate's going to increase. My pupils are going to dilate because I need to take in more information quickly. Where's the dog at? My blood vessels are constricting because I need to shuttle this blood quicker. You think about squeezing the bending a water hose, right? Taking and kind of constricting it, and that blood pressure, that water pressure increases. It's the same exact thing in the body on a very practical level. What are some things you guys have to run from? Does anybody know about that loose dog situation terrorizing the block? Clip that, Naomi. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. Oh, you know what, guys? I didn't put I got some how do I want to do this? How do I want to do this? Let's I just have something I gotta put in the description, but I don't think I did it. I have links. I have links that I gotta put in the description for this one here. Let's see if I can edit that. Do I want to do this now? One. These are links to these are the citations that we're gonna talk about, right? Let's just throw these in here real quick. These are the citations we're gonna talk about for this one here. So you guys, if you are really interested, I mean, I don't know how much you guys do follow along in terms of actually clicking the links, because I'm going to explain you don't have to click the link, but let me do this now before I forget. So let's throw this in here real quick. Citations, boom. Where am I writing from? Guys, give me one sec. Just be patient with me. I come from a world where streaming should be like, because I used to watch a lot of, I don't as much anymore, but I used to watch a lot of video game streams, and there's something always on screen. The best streamers I found were always talking, and I try to model that in a degree because I enjoy that for myself. So it's like I want that to be the case here as well, you know, where you guys are always hearing my voice, you're always getting some information, and there just aren't too many dead moments. With that being said, please join me in this dead moment. Live part 3. This should update. Oh, I didn't even put it there. Oh boy. Let's do it this way. I gotta make a more efficient process for adding my links in here. I see that now. quantity and quality of sleep. Yep, I got you. Boom. All right, that's 1. Dude. And sleep. Okay, there we go. Goodness gracious. That's 1. Goodness gracious. Watch these be the wrong links. What's the number 2? What's number 2? Single night. Partial. Boom. That looks like it's the 1. And healthy subjects. Yep, that's it. All right, 2 of 3 done. 1 more. 1 more. 1 more. Is he gonna make it? 1 more. Ladies and gentlemen, it's coming close to the end. Time's ticking. Is he gonna get it? Apparently not. I don't think I can spell perspective studies. Okay, there we go. Boom, 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 boom. I meta-analysis of perspective studies. Okay, I'll double check these after. That was on the fly. I hope these are all the right links. But anyways, the links that we will talk about, the actual research we're going to talk about, will be in the description for those that are interested in pulling up the studies in real time. Sparky, what is up? Thanks for hanging as I figured that out, guys. You guys are so... What's the word I'm looking for? Such smooth and easygoing people. That's the word I'm looking for. All right, what are we talking about? What are we looking at? Sparky, appreciate the support. Oh man, I just appreciate the support. I thought you were gonna leave some words, but you left a spinning hippo in a chair. All right, are you trying to call me a hippo? You got beef with me, Sparky? I'm just kidding. Kidding. All right, let's get into it. Let's keep this thing rolling. What are we talking about here? All right, so we really, and that's all, folks. All right, sorry, I'm getting foolish now. All right, so I talk about this dial, right? This effect where there are a couple things going on in reality, right? There's never this binary, right? There's never this switch where there's just one thing going and the other thing is not. There's levels, there's amplifications, and then there's inhibitions of things going on, right? For example, that parasympathetic nervous system influence, it inhibits the sympathetic nervous system, and then vice versa. So what are we talking about here? The reason we feel hungerful, and let's fly through this a little bit quick because ghrelin and leptin isn't as relevant in the lane and the way that we're going to attack this topic today. But I do want to mention this because these are 2 important, interesting hormones that really help you understand why the endocrine system operates the way that it does. So we talk about, oh man, I'm hungry. My stomach is rumbling. And we feel this very, almost want to say like tangible, visceral feeling of like hunger, right? Hunger is one of the most unique feelings ever. It's not pain. It's not pleasure, certainly not that. And it's this weird thing that you can't really, formulate in any other way. Like it's so unique, right? What causes that? We like to think, oh, my stomach is rumbling. I have an empty tummy. We used to say coming up, right? My tummy is empty, right? But is that actually what makes us hungry? Is our stomach being empty actually what makes us hungry? Well, the way I like to think about it is, well, how long does it take to process a meal, right? Let's say we're hungry and then we eat. And after we're done eating, let's say we process the meal completely. It's out of our GI tract in about 2 to 3 hours, right? Well, in about 2 to 3 hours, are we automatically hungry again because our stomach is empty? Oh, no, actually, we aren't automatically hungry again. So what actually makes us hungry? I'll tell you, it's actually when our energy substrates, our energy items that we can actually use to produce energy are running low, right? Now, this is a tricky subject because it has nuance, right? Because we could technically run off of fat, right? We could just convert the fat to energy. But remember, our fat is extremely precious to the body. It's not interested in getting rid of fat in almost any means, it is technically, in most cases, in terms of like what we would think, it's a last resort, right? Unless we are in true starvation mode, the body's not really interested in running off of fat. Now, we can modulate that and change that with exercise and other things. But in general, fat is energy rich. And the body is like, we're not touching that reserve unless we have to, right? Or unless we no longer need it, we'll start releasing it off the body, right? So there are things we can do, right? So ghrelin really operates based on what is in the body in terms of what's available for use at the moment that will make the most sense to actually use, right? So it's actually when our fuel for our metabolic processes are low, right? And to really understand metabolism, right? We think about it and we think about this binary of it's either fast or quick, but metabolism really just every single chemical process that takes place in the body, period. So we have separate branches of metabolism, energy production, the endocrine system. We have different branches of metabolism, but really metabolism is just the way to say that these are the operations that keeps us ticking. That is what our metabolism truly is. It doesn't necessarily have to all do with putting or getting rid of weight, putting fat on the body or getting rid of weight. That is very much so just a minor action of our overall metabolism. So it's really just this dynamic umbrella term. That's what our metabolism truly is. So what makes us stop eating? And I love leptin because leptin is our satiety hormone, our hormone to say that we are satisfied with what we've been eating. We're going to slow down. We're going to end our eating, our meal time, and we're going to call it there. So what actually makes this happen? The reason I like talking about leptin is because it's mechanically dependent. That is to say that it is the actual distension, the stretching, the widening of our GI tract and our stomach that actually triggers the release of leptin. That is to say that when we eat food and our food stuffs, the literal morsels start to expand and take up space, they expand the GI tract. That mechanism triggers leptin to say, hey, we're eating, we've taken in probably enough. This seems like a decent amount of energy. Let's go home, let's go on and all on leptin so we can get our mealtime cessation, the ending of our mealtime. Now, what's interesting is that leptin is called on regardless of the macro composition of our food. So we can get full on fat, we can get full on carbs, we can get full on drinking water, we can get full on protein, right? Either way, the stretching of the stomach and the GI tract is going to call on leptin. So it does not really matter exactly what we're taking in per se. That's why sometimes we eat, let's say, carbs, and we have this huge spike of blood sugar, and our leptin told us we were full or whatever because our stomach stretched, so we thought we were full, but we found ourselves hungry just 2 hours later. What happened? I just had a whole thing of spaghetti. Well, that's a lot of carbs, and what probably happened is you spiked your blood sugar, and it had this kind of rebound effect to where you dipped into a rough shuttle of glucose into the receiving tissues, right? And you ended up being hungry again because your blood glucose actually dipped out of this rebound effect. And there's this really cool graph. I didn't want to go deep onto this, but there's this really cool graph. If you guys look up, probably what could you look up? I can't think of the exact wording of it, but there's this graph that shows essentially once you eat something that's highly carb loaded, highly carbohydrate, your blood sugar actually rises at a quick rate, right? And this kind of really calls on insulin in a very I almost want to say violent way. And we're going to talk a lot about insulin in this. It's coming up. But essentially what happens is your blood sugar rises, and then insulin is in charge of actually regulating our blood glucose. So it takes the glucose and put it into storage. And what happens is you see this rise of blood glucose, and then it starts to dip down sharply, almost at about the same rate because of the job of insulin, right? So follow me here. As it's dipping down, it actually starts to go below the level of normal because insulin was called on so loudly, so violently. And that dip in normal blood sugar levels is actually what triggers us to be hungry once more, right? Is this short turnaround of blood glucose, of carbohydrates and their impact on our blood sugar that actually makes us more hungry in a short time after. Now, there's a video I made on this. It's called I Finally Figured Out Why We're Always Hungry. I believe that's the title. You'll know it's me. You'll know it's the video I'm talking about because there is this there's in the thumbnail, I'm just holding up like a piece of bitten bread or something, and it's like toward the camera. Watch that if you really want to go in depth about what I talked about, if you do kind of struggle with hunger. Now, this is something that is not universal across the board, but that is indeed the roller coaster effect. Thank you, Busby. That's what we're gonna call it. that's the entire point of no lab coat required. You know, forget the actual jargon of what it's called. It's called the roller coaster effect. Sparky, what's up, man? $10 holla, yo, I appreciate the support, man. Always showing up. Thank you, Sparky. A first time sending super sticker. Don't know as much as I like about endocrine system. Being supportive since I don't know enough to ask questions or comment. We'll listen to this one multiple times. Oh, that is so awesome. Yo, I appreciate that so much. The endocrine system is my jam. So the first thing I got like really interested in with health was the endocrine system. And the reason I talked about why sleep is so interesting to me is because what we find is that this is actually a crazy influencer on our endocrine system. And we're going to talk about it. Again, we have to lay a lot of this groundwork in order for this to make the most sense on what sleep, and I should say the lack thereof, actually has, the lack thereof, and what impact does that have on our waistlines? On our waistlines. Let me make this a little bigger. Why not? There's not a lot of text here. Hormones. So they are adaptive, right? They are adaptive and they're entrainable by different things. Now, time is one of the greatest and underappreciated influencers, impactors, if I can make that word up, that impacts our hormone and the timing of our hormones. Because what we'll find is that the regulation of our metabolism is really just the timing of the release of certain hormones. This is our metabolism right here. This is how we stay in homeostasis. When and to what degree do we release our hormones? At what time and to what capacity do we release our hormones? That is homeostasis. Both those things we can modulate and we can actually have volition over, if you will. Like we can actually control to a certain degree when and to what degree our hormones are released. And that is when you really start to understand the concept of how this stuff impacts our waistline. So, they are time and trainable. It's underrated influencer. Our body works on clockwork, and it makes a lot of sense because life works in a cycle. You guys probably are getting hints of what I'm getting at here when we say our body works on cycle. I'm gonna take a sip of my element. I'm curious. Throw it in the chat. Anybody know before I go to the next slide? What are we hinting at here? Body works in a cycle. It's clockwork. I'll give you another hint. 24 hours, right? What word am I about to say? What word am I about to spit out? Let's see if chat can figure it out. Rashida's on point. Rashida's on point. Wayne got it. Wayne has it. Wayne has it. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I'm sipping on LMNT, guys. So LMNT is the sponsor of this channel. Not necessarily like of this stream, but of this channel. I like to support them because they support me, and I really do believe in the product. If you guys are interested in supplementing or increasing your electrolyte intake, now LMNT's not for everybody. These are for people who are active, highly active. These are for people who spend a lot of time in the sun, for people who sweat significantly. If you are interested in replacing or replenishing on what you lose, and you want something that's alternative to some of the more conventional sugary things, go ahead and grab yourself up some LMNT. I'm drinking out of a can. This is their sparkling mix that they made. This thing is incredible. It's an awesome alternative, especially if you're trying to put down soda, right? We're trying to put down soda. Check out LMNT for sure. You guys had it. It was Circadian rhythm. It was Circadian rhythm. Absolutely. Oh, where did my slides go? What are we doing? What is this? Where'd it go? Boom! Boom! Oh, man. I love this stuff so much. I love this stuff so much. So circadian just means of 24 hours, right? That's what circadian means. But guys, this is so impactful. This matters so much into the release and the timing. Again, what is homeostasis? It is the when and the what degree our hormones are released. When and to what degree our hormones are released, right? That is our homeostasis. Naomi, I meant to say mark that. Mark that, Naomi. I meant to say mark that like a minute ago. All right, let's get into it. Now, this is where it starts to get fun. I love this so much. This is where it starts to get fun because we want to talk about, we're talking about fat, right? We're talking about fat and I guess how it got on the body in the first place. You understand this, you understand how to get it off, right? We talk all the time about weight loss, losing weight. But how the heck did it get there in the first place, right? That's really what we want to start to get at here. That's really what we want to start to get at here. So, insulin is the chief executive of storing fat. Insulin is the president of storing fat. Insulin is the fat storing hormone. It is in charge of storing fat. Now, we have to understand something about insulin because there's its action and then there's its job. Now, some of us are familiar with insulin, but if you really want to understand it, you have to understand its job. Insulin's job is to regulate blood glucose levels. Again, blood glucose is a major part of our homeostasis. Whether it's too high or too low, our body's always fighting to get it to an adequate level. And insulin is one of the hormones in charge of regulating our blood glucose. That's its job. But that's not its action. You see, insulin's job isn't to store fat. It's not there just to store fat. It's there to regulate blood glucose. Its action is to store fat, right? It regulates blood glucose by storing fat, by storing leftover energy, right? That is insulin's job. Mark that, Naomi. Now that's important because that helps us understand like the difference and what it's really there for. Like we shouldn't hate insulin, right? We need it, but we're going to talk about some really interesting things that take place with insulin right here. But I also want to use this example. When I was a fitness instructor, I had a job and I also had an action, right? My action was to instruct people, to demonstrate, to stretch with them, to talk with them, to coach, to yell at them, and laugh with them, and dance with them, and have fun. Like that was my action as a coach. But that wasn't my job. My job as a fitness instructor was to empower transformation, right? That was the company's motto: empower transformation. Right, that was my actual job. So with all that we do, and I want you guys to think about it. What in your life, what is your job and how do you achieve it? Right. So what is your job and what is your action? Start to understand that, right? It's kind of the why behind the action, right? So there's that dichotomy there, job versus action, right? So that makes just enough sense. If you guys are curious, I used to work over at Fit Code in Chicago, FITCODE, Fit Code. If you guys are in the Chicagoland area, no, I'm not. They're not sponsoring me or anything, but they are like a second family to me and I miss them so much. I'm probably gonna go visit sometime soon, hopefully. But you guys go check out Fit Code. They have 2 locations in Chicago if you guys are looking to join into like a gym and you just so happen to be in the Chicagoland area. If you guys are in here and you haven't told me yet, where are you from and what is your town or city known for? Where are you from and what is your town or city known for? Now, let me keep talking about this here. Um, Let me keep talking about this here because insulin is quite the interesting thing. Insulin is quite the interesting thing. So we hear all the time. We hear insulin resistance, and this is often synonymous with type 2 diabetes. Now we throw these words around, but what are we really saying? Like, what are we really getting at? So let's talk about the actual mechanism of insulin. Now, we went over this a bit more in our our first part of this series, right? This is part 3. We talked about it in part 1, what is taking place with insulin and what gets it to a point of insulin resistance. So you can go and check that out. But let's talk about what's taking place in terms of the analogy of the dull knife, right? We talked about the dull knife analogy. If I have a knife and I'm cutting my vegetables, let's say it's a dull knife and I'm cutting my vegetables, I have to overcompensate for its dullness by by putting in some extra elbow grease. I have to really get at it and really cut and really expend more effort in order to get the job done, right? Because the knife is dull, it is no longer sharp. Its effectiveness has lowered. In a very similar sense, insulin, when it becomes something that is overused, called on too often, then it starts to become dull. It starts to lose its effectiveness, right? It isn't able to be as effective as it would be if it was sharp. And that is to say that the hormones, or sorry, the tissues that respond to insulin, the tissues that uptake insulin and say, hey, these are the tissues that actually store the glycogen, right? They store the fat. Insulin is not able to have much of an influence on them in its state because it is dull. What makes insulin dull? Well, it's called upon continually and constantly and constantly. It's just like if we had our knife and we kept cutting and cutting and cutting and we never sharpened it, right? And we never sharpened it. So what are some things that sharpen insulin and then can help us regain its sensitivity? Well, that's what this is all about. That's what we're talking about. Because we modulate our homeostasis by what? How, when and to what degree, right? When and to what degree are our hormones released? So just like we have to put in more elbow grease to cut that vegetable, the same exact thing is taking place with insulin. We've gotten to a point to where our receiving tissues are not listening to insulin, right? That is what insulin resistance is, right? The sensitivity for insulin is a lot lower. They are not listening, right? And because of that, insulin has to be called on again. That means the pancreas is basically making more and more insulin. And that's that extra elbow grease to get the receiving tissues to listen. And that is where we get into a very dangerous space of hyperinsulinemia, right? And if we have, think about this for a second, if we have insulin being called upon and it's not as effective because it's called upon all the time, we could probably imagine this would result in some extra blood glucose just floating around, right? And now we're talking about hyperglycemia, right? We're in a hyperglycemic state. So that is hyper, we know that prefix as super. Glyc, we know that as sugar, right? And emia refers to the blood, if I'm not mistaken. So hyper blood sugar. So now we are in this state where it's like, oh boy, my insulin is constantly being called on, and I'm not able to shuttle enough of it into my muscles because they aren't listening, and that's going to leave some sugar behind. Right? Whatever our receiving tissues, because I said muscles, our muscles and our liver and our fat, right? That is when we talk about this. Those are the relevant receivers of insulin, right? Insulin is basically this is what insulin is. Insulin is a usher. It's a doorman, right? Insulin goes up to fat, it goes up to our muscles, and it goes up to the liver, and it says, "Hey, I have some glucose here with me. Would you like to hold on to it, please, for later?" Now, this in a sensitive normal state, our receiving tissues, right, the muscle liver and the fat, they're like, oh yeah, of course, insulin, we can work with that. I don't mind holding on to this. But it is when insulin comes up and knocks on our door all of the time that our tissues start to ignore the doorman. And now insulin almost has to exert itself even more, to a point of annoyance, to where our muscles and tissues and liver and fat is like, okay, fine, I'll take it, right? But that ends that, as we can imagine, that kind of like backs up our entire system. And when we keep carb loading and keep adding in more sugar, our blood sugar just continually rises. Type 2 diabetes is just it's diagnosed by our state of hyperglycemia, right? So hyper blood sugar, excess blood sugar, that is what leads us into the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. So that's like the actual mechanism behind insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is not insulin resisting, it's our receiving tissues resisting. Okay, I hope that made a whole lot of sense. Did that make sense, guys? Did that make sense? Insulin is the only hormone that is like, if you're going to start talking about fat, how it's gained, how it's lost, it's like understand insulin on a near intuitive level. And then from there, you'll be able to branch off into other things. But insulin is storing fat. So how do we get that in control? That's the goal there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Binksy. Awesome, Rashida. That's good to hear. That's awesome. So let's keep this thing rolling. It's Saturday. Let's keep this thing rolling. What are we talking about here? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Mark that, Naomi. What are we talking about? Oh, the part where I was going on about insulin. That part, please. So looking at here. Okay. Actually, let me first apologize. Cause what the heck, Johnny? Statistics on a Saturday morning, for some of us afternoon. Have you lost your flipping mind? Guys, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I brought this upon you. How do we want to attack this? Let's attack it violently. Let's just go at it. Let's just go at it. All right, so I'm sorry. These are statistics, but don't get overwhelmed by this. Let's just talk about what we're actually looking at here. Let's just talk about what we're actually looking at here. Let's just talk about what we're actually looking at here. So this at the top, let's talk about the fact that this is an observational study. This is the first thing that you can actually click in the description live if you do want to go and actually look at this on a bigger, like if you have a separate device and you want to pull this graph up. Now, this is from an observational study. This observational study was a meta-analysis. What the heck is a meta-analysis? It's when a bunch of researchers take a bunch of other researchers' work, they compile it together, and they come up with their own results. So this meta-analysis brought together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Y'all double check that for me. 9 studies. It brought together 9 studies. Just brought on my whiteboard. I love this part. So it brought together 9 studies. And what they're looking at is they're looking at the relationship between those that don't get a lot of sleep and type 2 diabetes. Now, why is type 2 diabetes the incident, the thing that we're measuring here? Why does that matter? Well, it's because of the principle of the process of how carb loading and excess sugar eating, and what does that lead to? Eventually, you run into the problem of type 2 diabetes, right? That is kind of like the terminal thing that we're trying to avoid. That's the terminal condition we're trying to avoid. So this study took the route of focusing on that pathway in order to talk about its relation to not getting enough sleep. Now, one thing to note here is that we have a bunch of things going on here. So we have these different sample sizes, right? So some of these have a lot of people. Guys, stay here with me. I know this looks super complicated, but it all makes sense. So these are studies. These are 9 different studies, right, lined up here. So what's going on here is that this is one study with 70,000 people. This is another study right here. It's just 550 people. Oh, this one over here has 238. That's not a lot of people, right? Now, that doesn't matter as much as the science that's being done. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about this first one, for example. This study has 70,000 people. The incident cases, nearly 2,000 people had type 2 diabetes. Nearly 2,000 people had type 2 diabetes in this observational study. So what is an observational study? Let me revert back just a little bit here. We're not intervening in these people's lives. These are people who took a survey, we monitored them in some way, and eventually, and at some point we kind of took everything together and we mixed all the results and we were able to measure everything up. But we never had these people like in a laboratory per se, right? This is an observational study, meaning we were just monitoring, just watching and measuring. Out of the 70,000 people, 4.3% were exhibiting short sleep. Now, this study, particularly this one with the 70,000 people, defines short sleep as getting 5 or less hours. 5 or less hours. So what can we do here in order to see how that impacts our risk for type 2 diabetes? Oh, we can look at people that are getting regular amounts of sleep. So we got people that are getting 5 hours or less, which is significantly little sleep, compared to those that are getting 8 hours on a regular basis. And what we're able to find is, we're not going to focus on this, don't focus on that. What we're able to find is that a relative risk increase is actually taking place. A relative risk increase is actually taking place. That is to say that the people that are getting 5 hours or less of sleep have the risk of they present the risk 1.19 times the risk of those that are getting 8 hours or more. That is to say that there is a 19% increase risk of those people that are getting 5 hours or less of sleep of developing type 2 diabetes. They have 1.19 times the risk of those getting extra sleep. So what does that mean? That means if we did the math, I did this math and I'm going to double check it here. That means let's just say that there's a baseline risk of 5%, right? Let's call this our absolute risk. Let's say there's a 5% risk of getting type 2 diabetes in our lifetime. Let's say that goes for everybody, right? Let's say that goes for everybody. So let's make this make sense, because I always talk about this relative risk and absolute risk and all these things. Now, let's talk about this for a sec. Let's just say it's 5%. Now we have a baseline risk for everything, even when we don't have symptoms. Let's say we have a baseline risk for breaking a bone at some point in our life, right? We have a baseline risk of falling down the steps at some point in our life, right? So we have these baseline risk, even though we may not have the symptoms of certain things, right? Just in general, there's a baseline risk of everything, right? There's a baseline risk of being poisoned, all these other things. When we are doing this type of science, where it's taking what we know as the baseline risk, and we're looking at a subset of populations, and we say, for those that do this thing, what is the risk increase or decrease? What is the risk difference for those that are doing this thing? So let's say that we have a 5% chance of developing type 2 diabetes in general. Let's say that is our baseline risk. For those that are getting 5 hours of sleep or less, there is a 19% increased risk. Well, let's just do the math. Let's just go 5%. If we do 5%, I got my calculator here. If we do 5% times 1.19, we get a measly 5. We get a measly 5, drawing with my mouse here. We get a measly 5.95%. It doesn't even go up, right? The absolute risk doesn't even go up an entire percentage point. So that is one of the perils of interpreting and communicating relative risk, is that we often see this huge number. We see, whoa, 19% increased risk. We often see that. Let me clear all this. We often see this 19% increased risk, like, and we go, whoa, that's major. But it's actually the absolute risk to focus on a little bit more. Now, that is not to say that this is not significant. There's a reason that we still report on these things. For example, let's talk about another study here. This one says if you're getting, this one has 550 people. They're saying that if you're getting 5 hours or less compared to those that are getting at least 6 to 8, for those that are getting 6 to 8, not at least, that are getting 6 to 8, there's a 180% increase, right? That says 180% increase. That's a 180% increase. That is massive. Now, that is a undeniable number. Now, the reason it's so important to bring up different studies, and the reason it's important to compile 9 whole different studies, right? 9 whole different studies. The reason it's important is because look at the variance in results. For this one, what the heck? This one has 238 people, and they found that if you were getting 7 hours or less than those that were getting 8, there was actually a decreased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. What? There's a decreased risk for those that are getting less sleep? So again, this variance behind these numbers is why we compile and we look at so many other studies, because we can average them out, and that's what we got here. But before we get to that average, let's just talk about the fact that I believe these are the same authors. These studies are the same authors. And you can see that it looks like they kind of checked their results and we're like, huh, there's a decreased risk. But then they found this 116% increased risk. Let's clear all that. There's a 116% increased risk found in this one here. What the heck? What the heck? So in one study, they said there's a decreased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, right? That is to say that those that are sleeping 7 hours or less present 0.47 times the risk of developing type 2 diabetes than those that are getting 8 or more. Like, how do we go from a decreased risk to an increased risk, right? So that just goes to show that there are downfalls of this type of science, right? When we can't intervene in people's lives. So at the end of the day, in general, since we compiled 9 studies, we're able to say on average, for those that are getting what we call short sleep. Now, short sleep is defined in different ways. As you look over here to the left, it's defined as different ways. But the less than 7 hours, less than 7 hours seems to be where we talk about. I'm not going to try to draw that. Seems to be where we talk about initially that window of getting short sleep. So in general, we can say on the short sleep side of things, if we just compile and look at the average, there is a 28% increase. Now, you guys are wondering where I'm pulling these numbers from. If you're wondering, I just look over here to the right of the 1, right? These are the actual percentages we talk about, right? these are the percentage increase, right? Unless it's a 2, then you basically increase. Now, this is a math class. I'm not going to try to staticize you guys, a statistician you guys. I don't know. What's the word? I don't want to go into stats here, but essentially, we have a 28% increased risk for getting short sleep if you compile all of this. Compile all this together. 28% increased risk of what? 28% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That is to say that those that are getting short sleep, just to really hammer it home, those that are getting short sleep present 1.28 times the risk of those that are getting 8 hours or more. Okay, let's get out of here with the stats. That was, whew, we made it. All right, we got it. We made it. We made it. We don't have to spend too much time on that. All right, we don't have to spend too much time on that. Oh boy. Ooh. We don't have to spend too much time on that. All right. What's up, guys? What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? Did we make it through that okay? Are you guys still here with me? Can I see some activity in the chat? What's up? Are you guys still alive? I'm drinking LMNT, grapefruit flavor. I love it. Are you guys still alive? Are we good? Are we thriving? Alexandra, thank you. Right back to you. Okay, good. Good to hear, Binksy. Awesome, Wayne. Good to hear. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys so much. Awesome. You guys are chilling. All right, we're alive. Cool. Awesome. All right, let's keep things rolling. So we're gonna start to get into the big picture, right? Why does all of this even matter in the first place? Is because we really want to understand the mechanistic activity behind why our body is putting fat on in the first place, right? So when we look at that same exact study, this is the first link in the cited research below. This is my thing. I'm always talking about what the heck is actually doing the stuff, right? What I mean by that, what is the mechanism behind what our body is doing on the outside? Like what is the mechanism behind our body ending up the way that it ends up, right? So that's really what we want to get in here. So this just says potential mechanism. Let's read this whole thing and then I'll get into some of the highlights, right? Causative mechanisms relating sleep problems to adverse health outcomes include reciprocal changes in circulating levels of leptin and ghrelin. We talked about those. These in turn would increase appetite and caloric intake, reduce energy expenditure, and facilitate the development of obesity and impaired glycemic control, increasing cardiovascular risk. Oh boy, increased cortisol secretion and altered growth hormone metabolism have also been implicated. Oh boy, what the heck are we even talking about? So we're talking about the potential mechanisms behind developing type 2 diabetes, aka synonymously, you can say loosely, developing insulin resistance. What are behind these things, right? We're saying that the timing of our sleep is a huge factor. And the reason we talk about timing here is because we're talking about the adverse health outcomes of sleep, because it's not often the amount of sleep that we get. Sometimes it's the timing of the sleep that we get. And I'm going to actually talk about that as well, because I brought a circadian rhythm and I didn't bring that up for no reason. But if we throw off the timing of things, our leptin and ghrelin can be thrown off, right? These in turn could increase appetite and caloric intake. That is to say that we could increase appetite for even more sugary things like we talked about earlier, right? That is partially a survival mechanism. Nothing runs on glucose more, right? Nothing demands more glucose than the brain, right? And the brain is the central organ for our function. Everything, right? Reverts back to what the brain decides, right? So essentially, we have to keep that thing fueled up. And when we are sleep deprived and fuel deprived, it's like the brain, it shuts down some of its prefrontal cortex, some of the decision making filters. It shuts those down late at night. That's why we make such poor decisions at night when we're sleep deprived. So just think about the combination. Our prefrontal cortex is shutting down and our brain is in demand of glucose because that's just what it loves. What the heck do you think we're going to reach for? You guys see what I'm saying? What do you guys think we're going to reach for? And that's why we oftentimes find ourselves eating a bunch of junk when we're sleep deprived the night of and sometimes the next day after. Now, I want to go back to this really quick because I wanted to hammer this and make sure we understand circadian rhythm. I didn't spend enough time here because this is going to really hammer things home. I realized I just missed a bit here. So let's talk about this because this matters a whole lot. Now I live in Illinois, the Midwest. There is an annoying amount of trains and railroads. There's a part not too far from my house, I'm not even kidding, where on the road there are 6 tracks, count them, 6 tracks that go across the road. And this is one of the least traveled roads. People, and I think there's a reason why, but because these are bumpy tracks too. It's like if I do catch a car over there, they're probably driving like 3 miles an hour because that thing will mess your car up, mess your whole day up because you will have to spend time repairing your wheels. Now, let's say that trains, outside of human error, let's say that trains are always on time, run a tight schedule, and are predictable. There's an interesting thing that takes place where the tracks meet the road because automobiles are there. This presents a critical situation of safety. Automobiles are reliant on the signaling that they are given. Automobiles are reliant on traffic signaling. There is the gate, the crossing gate that comes down when a train is coming. It lifts back up when a train has passed. Automobiles are obedient to the signals of that gate. That is to say that that gate, that crossing gate, is the end-all be-all, the most important factor for road safety at the train tracks, right? That is to say that the synchronicity, right? The timing, the in syncness of that gate with the timing of the train actually determines the entirety of road safety and health, right? That gate has to come down when that train is coming, and that gate has to go up when a train has passed. And this keeps things running smoothly. This keeps things safe and running well, right? Well, let's think about it. There's another thing that's always on time, runs a tight schedule, and it's actually predictable. It's the sun in the sky. Oh, okay, well, our hormones are reliant on the signal that they're given. And funny enough, we actually have a decent degree of control over the signals that our hormones are given. Okay, let's bring it back to the train. What happens when the crossing gate starts to send mixed signals? What happens when that gate malfunctions? What happens when a train is on the way and that thing ain't going down? Let's say that gate is up when it should be down and the train is coming. We are inviting a hazardous situation. Something is bound to go wrong. Like, uh-oh, this is sending mixed signals. And as you could imagine, this is probably going to bring on a problematic predicament. This is going to bring on some chaos because the automobiles are reliant on the signal of that gate. Okay, well, let's look back on at the body. Let's say the sun is down and we're up and we're supposed to be down. That is to say that we are supposed to be in sync with the sun. That is supposed to say that our synchronicity, our in syncness with the timing of the rising and the going down of the sun is what determines the entirety of safety and health in our body. Because our hormones are running off the signaling that we give it. Essentially, they're running off the adherence of our timing with the sun, right? That is to say, to cross the analogies, that we are like the control gate, and those automobiles are like our hormones. They are reliant on the signaling that we give them. And when we're up and the sun is down, we're giving them mixed signals. Because think about it. There is nothing that we could do to change the timing of the sun. Nothing. We are supposed to be in sync with it. And I know this on a very practical level. Of course, there's a ton of science to back this up. You look at shift workers and how their entire metabolism and the timing of their hormones is actually shifted, and they have these ill effects that come from that, right? Some more resilient than others. That's awesome. But I know this on a very practical level because when I was a Boy Scout, I live in the city now, we have light pollution. But when I was a Boy Scout, And I remember being in a tent at night and the sun was down. And I remember putting my hand in front of my face, looking to see if I can at least count my fingers. And I can't even see my hand because it just is that dark. That alone tells me, you know what? I probably should be asleep right now. I can see. The dangers of not being able to see is a serious deal. Right? Like we that alone, right, should tell us enough. Just that practical factor should tell us enough about the timing and how we should be aligned with the sun. And funny enough, we're going to talk about this on a scientific level, some of the mechanisms that take place when we are aligned with the sun. Mark that, Naomi. In and out. In and out. $5 holla. I appreciate it. Which runners are you going to be watching during the Olympics? Come on, In and Out. You knew this question would throw me off. You knew this question would get me excited. Dog, I'm so excited for the Olympics this year. I have yet to set up my timer. So I stay in Chicago. If for those that don't know, the Olympics are in Paris. And I live in Chicago, so my timing is going to be completely weird. Like they're going to be running the mile at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and I have to set my alarms because I cannot miss this stuff. But I'll tell you what, I'm excited to see Cole Hawker. He's a distance runner. I believe he's going to be in the 5,000 meter. Distance is not as exciting. It doesn't get as much publicity as those that are running the sprint, right? You think of Usain Bolt, you think of Sha'Carri Richardson. That's a very popular race because we're talking about the fastest people in the world. But I love the mile and I love the 5,000 meters. I love those longer distance races because the amount of strategy and chess that's going on between the runners switching positions and what takes place in the early amount of the race and then the late amount of the race. It's so fascinating to me. So Cole Hawker, Sha'Carri Richardson, obviously I'm looking forward to her flourishing. She peaked this year. I don't know if she's currently, but I believe she, there's been a few track meets, but I believe she was the fastest woman in the world for a bit. I don't know if that time was broken or not because it's been more track meets. There's been more track meets. But Sha'Carri Richardson, obviously. Noah Lyles, I'm excited for him. There's another guy. Kenny Bernard, I think he looks excellent. He's a sprinter. I believe he's in the 200, I want to say. He just looks so strong. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do. Gabby Thomas has impressed me. She's a sprinter, 200 meters. She's a lot faster than I thought she would be this year. She has impressed me. And then obviously, if you guys don't know anything about track, I'll just give you this last name, then we'll move on. Sydney McLaughlin, I want to call it. But Sydney is oh my gosh, she is like must-see TV. If you don't know anything about track and field, get ready to have the showdown go on. There is, I'll explain it this way. Sydney McLaughlin is our girl. She's American. That's our girl. She is like the Michael Jordan of the 400 meter hurdles. That's her staple race, right? She also runs the flat 400, but she's our girl, right? Nobody's touching her basically worldwide except for one person. And she is from, I want to say Belgium, but I could be wrong. If anybody knows, let me know. I can't remember her name, but she's the only person that can give Sydney McLaughlin a run for her money. And I am so excited to watch this race live. It's not even funny. Femke Bol. If you guys need to know two names, like this is revolutionizing track and field. If you guys want to get up on the history, go onto YouTube and search up Femke Bol and search up Sydney McLaughlin. They're like friendly rivals, if you will. But okay, tangent over. I love track and field. I'm so excited for the Olympics this year. Did I see Life is Nick? What's good? What's good, Nick? Nick's in chat. That's my brother. It's good to see you, man. What's up? All right, In and Out. I hope you're happy. Thank you so much for the 5. Thank you so much. Yeah, long distance, baby. I see you, Wayne. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. Let's keep this thing chatting. Yeah, the Netherlands, I believe, right? Yeah. Thank you, Matt. So yeah, I'm super excited for that. I hope my train analogy and all that stuff made sense with the timing and why it's so important to have our hormones be aligned with the sun, right? Synchronicity. The timing, right? In syncness with the sun. That's important. All right, let's keep this thing rolling. Hey, mark that, Naomi, that part where I was talking about the train, if you will. I'm sorry, that is so far behind, but I don't know if I said mark that, but I wanted that to be marked. I am putting you to work. That is so ill-mannered on my part. I'm so sorry. Uh, purple, or never mind. Just if you guys ever have the chance, just thank Naomi for being a mod. She always shows up and helps me out. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Naomi. All right, let's keep things rolling. Let's keep things rolling. So we left off getting into the research, right? Because we're talking about the actual mechanisms here. We're talking about the actual mechanisms here. So we went over this. Now, this is the study that we were talking about getting into. This is so fascinating. Now, we talked about the observational study, and we can only get so far in observational studies. Essentially, you have to get to a point to where you need to intervene in people's lives, and that's what interventional studies are all about. So this is an interventional study that is so fascinating because what they found, and let's read it here. The results indicate that partial sleep restriction during only a single night reduces insulin sensitivity by 19 to 25% of hepatic and peripheral glucose metabolism. What are we saying here? These researchers, they actually brought people in a lab. This is why we love interventional studies, because you can actually intervene in people's lives and see closer to real life what takes place when people are sleep deprived. So they bring these people in and they make sure that they are, they make sure they're getting adequate rest for a period of time, for a few days and for a few consecutive days. And then they just completely strip them of adequate rest down to 4 hours. Down to 4 hours, right? And what's interesting, if I can draw, down to 4 hours. Oh no, go this way. Down to 4 hours. And what's interesting is we talk about chronic sleep deprivation and its effects. But what this study did was they found that just the one night of sleep deprivation had quite the impact on their insulin sensitivity. Okay, let's rewind, because we talked a whole lot and we threw a whole lot of words out, and what are we talking about? But what is insulin sensitivity? We might have to remind ourselves. Insulin sensitivity is the level of reception that our receiving muscles, I keep saying muscles, our receiving tissues are giving insulin. So that is almost how welcoming of insulin our receiving tissues are. That is sensitivity, right? If they're highly sensitive, that's a great thing. That means leptin doesn't have to put in too much elbow grease for them to shuttle and usher in glucose to our receptive tissues. If they're insulin insensitive, meaning that they just aren't listening to insulin has to put in a lot more elbow grease to communicate and actually have this sugar, this glucose, shuttled into the storage units of the receiving tissues. Mark that, Naomi. So that is what that is. So let's keep things rolling. 19 to 25%, right? Off a single night. And when we talk about the impact of this stuff, right? And you guys can feel it, because it's really, guys, it's on an acute level, right? We know how we feel when we are sleep deprived. It doesn't take 2 nights of sleep deprivation. It takes 1 night of bad sleep for us to feel like crap. Why is that? Why is that it takes just 1 night? Oh, I'll tell you why. Let's read this. Again, you can follow along. This is in the second citation. The time in bed was centered at the same time, i.e. approximately 3. No, okay, skip that. Let's go to the first sentence. Slow wave sleep is thought to play the most important role in metabolic, hormonal, and neurophysiological changes during sleep. Slow wave sleep mainly occurs during the first part of the night. So what the heck are we talking about? Author Sean Stevenson, he wrote Sleep Smarter. Let me know if you guys know Sean Stevenson. Funny enough, real quick aside, Sean Stevenson is like my health hero. He is the person that when I was becoming newly health conscious, he ushered in majority of the education and knowledge for me through his podcast. And when I did get his book, it's called Sleep Smarter. It's a bestseller. This book is so practical and it teaches on sleep in such a practical way. If you guys are looking to really hammer in and really level up your sleep, because you'd be surprised in what it can change in your life. If you're interested in leveling up your sleep, go ahead and purchase that Sleep Smarter book and get to reading because it changed my life. Now, in this book, he talks about this time between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., right? This is a deep sleep because when we first fall asleep, we almost like automatically go into this really, really deep sleep. And it's important because he calls it, Sean Stevenson calls it money time sleep. And this is between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And what's taking place is a lot of recovery, a lot of healing, a lot of replenishing, right? And the body is resetting in these initial stages of sleep. Well, think about the stage of the timing of sleep where we usually skip out on when we stay up late. We're probably missing out on that money time sleep, that 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. where our body in alignments with circadian rhythm would like to produce the most restorative benefits, right? That's what we're missing out on when we miss out on that slow wave initial period of sleep. This is when things reset. This is the most important role in metabolic and hormonal and neurophysiological changes during sleep. Guys, this isn't some type of thing to toss by the side. This is not something we just like glance over. Look at the impact. Metabolic, we talked about metabolism. Hormonal, we talked about hormones. Neurophysiological, we talked about neurophysiological a little bit with the sympathetic nervous system. This is when things reset. That money time between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. in alignment with the sun, right? And of course, this is a seasonal thing as well, as sometimes the sun goes up and down at different times of the day. But in general, if we're talking about aligning our hormones, we're talking about not missing out on this critical period of sleep. Mark that, Naomi. This piece is so critical, but I don't want us to become neurotic about this because there's so many things we can do to improve our sleep. I don't want us to become the people that are like, yo, I can't miss out on my sleep. And we start to like stress over falling asleep at the right time. Because when we start to stress over falling asleep, counterintuitively, it actually hinders our ability to sleep. And I used to struggle with that, actually. Funny enough, when I first got excited about like falling asleep and stuff, it's like I did have a period of time where it's like I stressed so much about getting sleep that it actually hindered my sleep onset. It actually hindered my ability to fall asleep. I'd lay there and I couldn't fall asleep. And that is actually one of my greatest pet peeves. I actually slept in today. Sleeping in for me is like getting up at like 7 or 8, but I slept in today to about 7:30 because I actually couldn't fall asleep. Yes, last night. I actually couldn't fall asleep last night. And I attribute it to the late nap that I took. I took a nap around 3 o'clock yesterday. And it's just funny how the body shifts everything. I'm not a coffee drinker. I want to make a video on coffee because a lot of us are dependent on coffee for our, I don't want to say energy because coffee doesn't provide energy. It works in different ways, but essentially a lot of us rely on coffee to kind of get through the workday. And I want to make a video on it. But what's so interesting is that I was sitting at my desk, and this is when I know I got to take a nap. I was sitting at my desk and I start to do this. Like, it's like you do that little drift back. Woo, it's like you catch yourself. It's like a half a second drift. Like, ooh. You do that like 2 or 3 times. It's like, brother, get up and go to bed, right? I have the luxury of being able, from somebody who does work at home, right? I have the luxury of being able to go and fall asleep if I have to. I understand everybody doesn't have that luxury, but that's when I know, boy, you better go take a nap because you can't even read this sentence without having to reread it because you forgot what you read, right? That's when I know I need to go to bed. I took that nap. The nap was all of maybe 30 minutes. I got back up. Of course, you shake the drowsiness off. But I found when I sat back down at my desk is my level of focus was just like reset, right? That is the power of sleep. Its ability to reset. And its timing is so imperative to our health. That's why when we stay up, we lose that ability to focus. We start forgetting things. Our hormones are thrown off. And then lastly, topically, we store fat. Insulin is not as, our receiving tissues are not as receptive to insulin, right? Um, our insulin malfunctions, and we don't want, see, because that may sound kind of counterintuitive. If insulin stores fat, why would we be concerned about not having enough insulin, right? Why would we be concerned about our insulin levels, I guess you would say, go down, right? If insulin stores fat, wouldn't we not want insulin to be in the blood? That's not necessarily the right question. It's not about whether we have high or low levels of insulin. It's about when it is released and to what degree it is released. That is physiological balance. If we can align that and time that right, that's when things start. That's when the weight starts to fall off, right? That's when, because here's the thing, insulin doesn't just store fat, it also acts as a lock on our fat. So when insulin is in the blood, because think about it, insulin has the influence of shuttling glucose and energy into our fat cells. So if insulin's high in the blood, why the heck would it want to release any of that fat? So when we talk about why is it hard to lose weight sometimes, well, maybe it's because of the dysfunction of insulin. It's acting as a lock on our fat stores. And it's really hard to reset insulin if we aren't aligning ourselves with the proper timing and the proper duration of sleep. Mark that, Naomi. All right. All right. I've been bashing you guys over the head with the research. I'm proud to say that there is no more research. Oh, what's this? Is this more research? I lied. There's more research. Gosh darn it. Gosh darn it. There's more research. This is number 3. All right, let's read through this real quick. Increased sympathetic nerve activity may result in reduced B cell, beta cell responsiveness and inadequate pancreatic insulin secretion, while increased uptake of glucose by total sleep or slow wave sleep deprived brain could result in an increased circulating levels of glucose and postprandial insulin to glucose ratio. Man, what the heck? What the heck did you just read, brother? What was that? We talked about the sympathetic nervous system. What's so interesting about this is that when we're sleep deprived, we actually have this kind of low level amplification of our sympathetic nervous system throughout the day. That is to say that it has a greater influence when we are sleep deprived, right? What's interesting here is that our beta cell, what is that? That is the actual cell that's in charge of like secreting, releasing insulin. This cell lives in our pancreas. That's why you see pancreatic, right? There's a whole lot of jargon here, but it really makes sense. Our insulin secretion is inadequate when our sympathetic nervous system is active. So what are we saying? Let's go back to this. Our sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight, right? Insulin secretion, what do you guys think? Do you guys think the secretion of insulin is under the influence of parasympathetic or sympathetic? Just give it a little bit of thought. Let me take a sip. Give it some thought. I'm going to reveal the answer. Taking a sip of my element. Give it some thought. Do you guys think insulin is the release of insulin is primarily a influence of the parasympathetic nervous system or the sympathetic nervous system? Well, let's reveal the answer. Let's reveal the answer. If the parasympathetic nervous system is about resting and digesting, think about it. When you eat food, you have this moment where you have a lot of foodstuffs in your body, right? Eating food is quite the process. You have all this foodstuffs in your body, and your body starts to absorb it into the blood. And when it starts to absorb it into the blood, you have this moment where insulin responds, right? Because you're bringing in new energy, and insulin's job is to regulate the energy, the glucose, the sugar in the blood. So of course, insulin is going to be released as we are eating, right? And bringing that stuff into the blood. That is digestion. So somebody had it in chat. That is an influence. Insulin secretion is an influence of the parasympathetic nervous system, right? That's why you see here. That's why you see here. This actually gives away a hint. That's why you see here. Oh, sorry. That's not it. That's why you see here Glycogen synthesis. Glycogen synthesis. Oh, I got to do that again. One sec. That's why you see here glycogen synthesis. Insulin. Insulin is ushering in that glycogen, right? So if insulin is primarily a sympathetic nervous system, a parasympathetic nervous system thing, right? That's what parasympathetic nervous system does. It increases the secretion of insulin, right? It allows for insulin to do its job. If our sympathetic nervous system, right? If our sympathetic nervous system is more active due to not getting sleep, then how can our insulin be released? That's why we have inadequate pancreatic insulin secretion. When you have not enough insulin being released, you have this subsequent excess glucose in the blood, increased glucose in the blood, and we're not able to shuttle it and get rid of it as much because our sympathetic nervous system is ramped up. So it's funny enough, sympathetic nervous, being stressed out and being in danger or not getting enough sleep and activating and influencing, amplifying the impact of the sympathetic nervous system has a cascade of effects. But funny enough, one of them is having to do with your blood sugar not having anywhere to go because insulin can't get out and have its impact. And we talked about how the brain is one of the most demanding things when it comes to glucose. It really wants that glucose. What they're saying is that a sleep-deprived brain results, a sleep-deprived brain could result in increased circulating levels of glucose, right? But that really is to say that a sleep-deprived body, this is where, now, if I'm understanding this right, this is the only place where this research, to me, falls a little bit flat because we talked about this. Now, this is going to be a little bit more deep into the nuance. So just kind of hang with me here. Glycogen, we store that. That's just leftover sugar, leftover energy. And we store that in our muscles and our liver primarily. But there's also a place where we store this in our brain in small amounts because our brain is so demanding. So, right, this makes sense for the body. That's a smart design. If the brain is so demanding, why not store some of this energy stuff in the brain, near the brain? So that is to say, what they're saying here is that, if I'm understanding this right, what they're saying here is that let's bring it to this analogy. Let's say I'm out of eggs. Let's say we're out of eggs and we need some eggs. Our neighbor has eggs, right? So we can go down and get some eggs from our neighbor, and then supply ourselves with the eggs. That can work. What this study is saying is essentially equates to, instead of going to our neighbor for some eggs, let's go all the way down 6 blocks and get some eggs from our very far distant neighbor. That's what this study is saying the brain is doing. They're saying that the brain is sleep deprived, so it's asking for the release of glycogen from far away spots. The muscle and the liver, why would it need the glycogen from over there when it has its own glycogen stores, right? That is to say that they should be asking for glycogen from their neighbor, glucose from their neighbor, right? And not calling on the release of it from these very far away things, right? Now that is a little bit more technical, but that is essentially what this is saying. That's the only place this falls flat. But really, this all kind of comes together, and starts to explain why the timing of our hormones is so important. Why the synchronicity of us and our adherence to the rising and the falling of the sun, and that critical point we talked about it from about 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That critical point where we get that restorative, deep, resetting sleep is so important. And if we're struggling to lose weight and we're wondering why we may plateau, in really more ways than one outside of weight loss, maybe consider looking at sleep, lining up your homeostasis, allowing your hormones to line up so they can do their homeostatic thing. You know what I'm saying? All right. That was a lot. Any questions, guys? Let's chat. Let's chat it out. I see the chat start move. Stop. Like I seen the chat slow down. When the chat slows down, that means one of a few things. That either means you guys are multitasking, you guys are really into what I'm saying, or you guys are totally lost. so let me know where you guys at of those three. You're totally lost, you're really into it, and you're listening, or you're just washing dishes. Like, where are you guys at? How are you guys feeling? Life is Nick. What's up? I have a question, bro. So it said based off of how many hours you sleep in a night or what time you actually go to sleep for the night. Like, what about the people who work overnight shifts and sleep during the day? So there's a difference between sleep duration and sleep quality. That's really what we want to understand. Night shift workers suffer the most and are negated. They lack the opportunity to get quality sleep. Quality sleep, by definition, is sleep that aligns best when the sun is down. Because we are just wired, our hormones are wired to work in a cycle. The only reliable cycle in all of existence that we cannot modulate by any technology is the sun. So, on that level, it makes the most sense for our hormones to align with the sun, and then we end up getting all of these hormonal benefits that we talked about, right? So, that's awesome, but our shift workers miss out on that. Our shift workers may still sleep during the day, but they get 8 hours of sleep, but they still may feel like crap, or they still may have excess weight, or they still may struggle with being on edge on certain things, or they still might struggle with so many other things, right? And that's only because of the impact that the sun has in terms of the circadian rhythm, right? When you take yourself out of that rhythm, we're bound to have some complications. We're bound to develop some problematic things. So what do we do with shift workers? And Sean Stevenson, this is not my idea. He actually talked about this in the Sleep Smarter book. We need people up at night, right? We live in a society where we need the police, we need firefighters, we need nurses, we need doctors, we need people that can be up in odd hours of the night. That's just the reality of the life that we live. So we need shift workers. And Sean Stevenson talked about this. We need them, but that doesn't mean they have to work on that shift forever. I'm not an economist. I don't know everything about, like, positions and jobs. I can't speak for the entire system or whatever, but I do know that if you're a CEO and you have the opportunity to allow your shift workers to work on shift for a period of time and then shift them off and have a rotating schedule, you're probably going to increase productivity. You're probably going to increase the health and the overall well-being of your workers. So, shift work is necessary, but it is one of those things where in modern society, we do want to find a way to make it work best for us and our health, because it is really rough to live on a shift working schedule and sleep on a shift working schedule for an extended period of time. So that is the truth. Sparky says he's really into it. R.S. almost said all three of them. Look, I'm locked in, I'm lost, and I'm multitasking. Matt's multitasking. Life is Nick. You're Nick's multitasking. Yeah. Yes. Have you heard about some of the studies around people with different chronotypes? Yes. Now, I want to say you mean like biphasic sleep. Some people don't need enough sleep. Some people don't need like 8 hours of sleep, right? So we do have different. And some people are early risers, right? Some people are night owls. Some people are morning birds, right? There's another author. It's not Sean Stevenson. Matthew Walker. Do I have his book over here? Matthew Walker, I believe, is his name. PhD holder. He wrote Sleep, the Impact, the Power of Sleep. Now I gotta Google it just to get it right. Matthew Walker. Why we sleep. Why we sleep. And he spent a little bit of time talking about the different chronotypes. And he mostly talked about um, some people actually are not that good at waking up in the morning. Right? Some people, their genes expect them to have a later rise. Some people, it's the complete opposite. It's like they need to wake up in the morning. Like they naturally wake up early. Um, I my cousin, his name is Kevin. I used to stay over his house when I was little, and I stay up all late. I'd play video games and stuff, and then I'd sleep in. I'd probably wake up at like 10 a.m. and he'd be up like already ready for the day. He already showered, he already had breakfast, and it's because he woke up at 6 a.m., right? With no alarm. That was just his body. That's just what his genes do. They expected him, and he just woke up at that time, right? So there are differences, and there is science behind it. We like to, in society, we associate late risers, right, with laziness, slothfulness, but it turns out that everybody ain't built to wake up early, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. So if you can embrace that and have those different chronotypes, then that is okay. Now, in terms of biphasic sleep, and a lot of people not needing 8 hours, like everybody don't need 8 hours of sleep. Don't let that message propagate online. That is a very, very small amount of people that are actually able to live medically healthy without getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep on a regular basis. That is a very negligible point when we talk about sleep health and overall health. The amount of people that don't need 7 to 8 hours of sleep are some of the are not anomalous. They are an anomaly, right? These people are a very small population, and they probably have a certain environment and a certain thing going on physiologically that doesn't call for a lot of sleep on a regular basis, right? But for the most part, a lot of us, we need 7 to 8 until proven otherwise, or until some research comes out. And Matthew Walker talked about that as well. Like, nah, that's a whole lot of like bullcrap. Don't go around thinking that you can survive regularly, like and function optimally, getting 5.5, 6 hours of sleep. No, get your sleep. Get your sleep. Right. Get your sleep. Jeff Haas says Matthew Walker's book is full of errors. And you know what? I only read some of the stuff that was really good, and I read a lot of stuff that was like he talked about dreams in it as well. Like again, you got to be able to separate the meat from the bones, right? I didn't double check a lot of his work. I didn't double check like a lot of his work, but some of the more interesting things. Like I'm going to reference that book probably when I start. I plan to make a video on like napping and how we've deprived ourselves of what might be required for the optimal physiological health. I could, it's one of those things you got to do the investigative research firsthand, right? So I actually have to dig into it myself and really see. But yeah, so you read Matthew Walker's book. Yeah, I didn't read the entire thing. I don't care about dreams right now as much, so I didn't read that part. But there were definitely some things in there as well that I wasn't fond of. But that kind of comes with a lot of books because I don't know, some things just don't make sense. You start talking about certain types of evolution and all this other stuff, and it's just like, okay, all right, what are we talking about here? So yeah, sometimes some things do turn me off when we're talking about like scientific conversations. Okay, I can't sleep past cat breakfast time. What? Somebody tell me, what is cat breakfast time? When is cat breakfast time? Help me, somebody. Somebody tell me what cat breakfast time is. Oh, he theorizes that 6 hours is the sweet spot. Oh, I may have missed that. I missed that, Jeff. From what I know, again, I have not done firsthand research. I have not done much of firsthand investigative research either. From what I know, from what I'm able to gather, that ain't the sweet spot. You need more sleep than that. You need more sleep than that on a regular basis. Most of us, from what I gather, again, I don't know. There's a lot to learn, right? There's still a lot to learn. I love this channel. Almost everything on the internet is brain rot. It is so refreshing to be riveted. Oh, what a word. I like that. Riveted by engaging entertainment. Thank you so much, Salt. Thank you so much. That means a lot. That really, really blesses my heart because that's really what the whole goal is, right? For those that don't know, research is not written for the public. Research is not composed for us, right? And I'm developing No Lab Code Required's model a little bit more, but I'm starting to think about it because when you give us some thought, where do we get our knowledge of health, right? where is it outside of anecdote, right? Most of what we know in terms of what to apply and what we know about our health is mostly anecdotal, right? Things that we heard or possibly the influence of marketing. In order to understand like true health, we have to do science. But the problem is, science is complicated and it's exclusive and a little snobby. And no lab coat required is looking to change that. Because we need to understand health, we need to understand how to optimize our bodies to live as long and thrive as long as possible. But we still got to do the science, right? We have to understand what the heck these people are talking about. So no lab coat required is about removing as much jargon as possible, making these things make sense on a practical level, really breaking things down, talking about mechanisms, and applying it all. All right. He found that too much sleep is far more harmful than too little sleep. He found that too much sleep is far more harmful than too little sleep. Now, a lot of sleep, and I did look into some research that there's a lot of sleep that people spend a long time in bed, right? A lot of these things are associated with obstructive sleep apnea, right? That's also one of the things that correlates with having a lot of fat on the body. And then you look at people who express a lot of symptoms of depression, right? They spend longer times in bed. And there were some interesting things that took place where there was actually a U-shaped curve, if you will, for those that know about it, like U-shaped curve. But let's make this make sense. For those that are not getting a lot of sleep, right, we call that short sleep. And then for those getting long sleep, we actually seen similar or comparable increases in the risk of type 2 diabetes. Fascinating, right? That is to say that a lot of people that are getting a little sleep and a lot of people that are getting a whole lot of sleep, there is a comparable risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So yes, there absolutely is a sweet spot of sleep, but most of us don't need to worry about getting less sleep, right? Most of us don't need to worry about that. Here in America, we need to worry about getting more sleep, more than anything. Dawn is cat breakfast time. Yeah, I'm like you. When I wake up and the sun has been up before me, that's late to me. Like I need to be up when the sun is rising or a little bit before. Me personally, right? Or I feel like my entire routine is gonna I feel behind. So that's my chronotype. Like I wake up in the morning. I'm an early riser, early bird. 100%. Okay, guys, I hope you guys got some value out of this one. I really enjoyed this. Let's talk about how can we improve our sleep. One practical thing to take away from this stream. Get your phone out of your bed. Get your laptop out of your bed, right? We talked about the sun, right? And our alignment with it. But what is the sun? Well, it's a big old light. It's a big old light in the sky. So our body is adapted. Our body actually responds to light, right? The literal light hitting our retina sends information to our signal to our hormones. That's a signal to our hormones, right? We talked a little bit about melatonin. I said that I bring that up. Melatonin is not the sleep hormone. It's called the good sleep hormone, right? That's what Sean Stevenson calls it, right? Because that ushers in our ability to restore, recover, actually have great sleep. But the problem is we delay our timing of melatonin because we're shining our screens in our face all the way up until bedtime. We have to have a period of maybe an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours if you can squeeze that, of getting light out of your environment. And that's going to help the body usher in a time of your heart rate going down, your temperature going down, and really ushering a period of really good sleep. It even sounds good just thinking about it, right? All right, we're gonna sleep good tonight, Saturday. We're gonna sleep good on this Saturday night. Making sure your room is completely dark, right, and cool, right? This ushers in such an awesome period of healthy sleep. So yeah, get your phones out of your bed, right? That's one of the best things. If you want to do look into more practical things, perhaps I'll make a video on it or something. But in terms of modern day, we got to get our phones out of our bed. That blue light shining, right? That's one of the more effective communicators of light. One of the more effective areas on the spectrum of light. The blue light is one of the more impactful in terms of shifting our entire release of hormones. Now, I need to do a little bit more first-hand investigation on that because there's some more interesting stuff that came out on that. But in general, all light is a problem. Turn it off, right? Turn it off. And we get to a point to where we need to revert back to some of the things that we did before in order to really achieve health, right? We don't need to completely, go back to flame and torches. You know what I mean? But we do need to reintroduce some of the more simple things at night than being on our phone, like reading, talking with our family, telling stories, right? You know what I mean? Do you think blue light blocking glasses actually help, or are they a cash grab? So, Jeff Ha, that's an awesome question. Let's just talk about that. Blue light blocking glasses are both. They are effective and they're a cash grab. The reason they're effective is because blue light, as we do know, it actually is, right? The blue LED light, right? That actually is something that is impactful on the spectrum of light that actually shifts our hormones. We do know that, right? What's fascinating about blue light blocking glasses is that there are some out there that are good and there are some out there that are absolute trash. So I bought these and these were, I want to say almost 80 bucks. That's why I say they're also a cash grab, because the good ones are expensive because they know that they work, right? So I can actually hold these up, and I wish I can show you guys an example, but I can actually hold these up to a blue light, right? I can shine a blue light through these, and you wouldn't be able to see it on the other side, right? So they really do filter out the blue light. If the blue light blocking glasses do not have an orange tint, a significantly orange tint like these, then they aren't doing anything. Just straight up, they aren't, right? If you're able to look at a blue light, right? Here's a perfect example. Like we see these little blue lights on our LEDs, on our TVs. Like when we turn them on, I put these on, I look at the little blue light on my TV. It's not even there anymore, right? So they should block blue light. And I also find, this is me, again, this is just me, but there is some science behind it. I also find, and this is how I test if things are effective. Because it seems such like a sham, right? It does. It just seems like, oh, I could block blue light, and it does seem like a sham. But this actually is one of the advances in technology that is good, that actually can help us, from what I am able to gather. What I find is that when I'm sitting at my desk and it's getting late, and my eyes are I'm starting to feel like pressure in my eyes. I actually put these blue light blocking glasses on. I turn on the yellow setting, I dim my brightness, and I can feel the pressure relief from my eyes, right? So you can say that is just like the power of light in general. But there has been times also where I start to feel like tired when I put the glasses on, right? It really is, and it really is fascinating. So if they're within budget and you guys can find some, these are Swanwick. I got these from Swanwick. Again, they were like 80 bucks, but they're one of the things that I do recommend trying. These are one of the things I do recommend trying. I'm quick to call it. I'm more skeptical of anything. I'm skeptical like the rest of us. Like I'll call something out if it's a sham, but yeah, turn your phone on night shift, turn on dark mode, lessen the brightness of our devices, put on some freaking blue light blockers, and maybe our hormones can still tell the body what to do. All right, purple hearts in the chat, guys. I enjoyed this one so much. I'm not gonna leave it too long for the people that want to rewatch. Thank you guys so much for watching in. Let's get some purple hearts in the chat. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are awesome. Oh, what did I do there? I think I just locked my computer. I didn't even just hotkeyed my computer. Purple hearts in the chat, guys. Purple hearts in the chat. Thank you guys so much for watching. Rashida, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being there. Yes, cute kitty, turn on dark mode. Absolutely. How about moonlight? Yeah, moonlight is a very low lux, L-U-X. Look up lux scale, L-U-X scale, and look at the difference of lights. Some lights have a greater impact than others. Look up lux if you want to find out what has the greatest impact on our melatonin. Oops, almost spam eggplant. Get out of here, Nick. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Naomi. Thanks, Naomi, for streaming. All right, this was awesome, guys. Hey, you guys take care. Love you guys. This will go up as a replay. Peace out. I'm gonna get about y'all way. Sparky, I caught that. $10. Thank you. Supposedly, before regular schedules and electronic lights were common, because of work or school, people would sleep 4 hours, wake up and talk or eat for a half hour or so, then sleep another 4 hours. Think about how feasible that is without the influence of light, too. Thank you so much, Sparky, for your input and your donations and your support. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna get about y'all way.